Bit of a rough night last night. I'm going to drink some water. Right. So basically, everyone here in this room listens to music. It's a foregone conclusion. What we don't really know is why we listen to music. Obviously, it gives us pleasure. But why include it in your games? Why use it in advertising? Why use it in your media content? And that's what we're going to look at today, is how to pick good music. And once you understand what makes music good, then you can understand how to use it. So, the modern world, it absolutely throws distractions at us left and right. I mean, every single person in this room gets hit by thousands of brands every day, all screaming for your attention. Your mobile phone, billboards, Spotify adverts, pop-up ads, it's like endless. And every single one of you has become incredibly good and efficient at blocking out all of this noise. And that's a problem. It's a problem for you as game designers. It's a problem for people who are in advertising. We've gotten just good at being like, nah, fuck it, not listening. It's blocked out. So, how do you get around that? Well, the good news is that you have music. Music really helps you break through this barrier that people have created. And it does that by connecting with people emotionally. Only music has this unique ability to consistently make you feel emotion, to like give you tingles on your skin, to make you feel excited, to make you feel sad, to like complement your mood. So music is actually the secret weapon in this arms race for taking people's attention. And once we know why the music affects us, then we can look at how to apply it to the brands and games and companies that we're building. So, why should you include music? Music is an important part of all of our lives, as we already said, and music is one of those key elements that makes people feel emotion. And if someone feels emotion while they're playing your game, they're going to come back and they're going to want to repeat that emotional connection. When they start coming back, the likelihood that they spend money or monetize also increases. So that's the first reason. The second reason is immersion. If you get the music right in a game or in a video, it takes all the hard work that you've put into the mechanics, into the game design, into the art, and it just amplifies it. I've been talking to a lot of people here, and interestingly enough, it seems that music is actually one of the last things that gets decided in a game, and it's very often just put in at the end. It's like, oh shit, game's launching next week, we need music, blah, 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 this guy, make music for us. And yeah, it works, but you're missing out on a huge thing because, believe it or not, music is communication. And it's an incredibly overlooked method of communication and an incredibly powerful one. So, music is the shorthand of emotion. I think that's a great quote. So to really harness the power of music, we're going to look at why it affects us and how we can apply that. So let's get started. Before 2007, people had no clue whatsoever why music made us feel emotional. Scientists looked at things, they studied really hard measurable facts, and they came up with some really interesting stuff. So scientists looked at when people listened to music, their heart rate went up. If they listened to other music, their heart rate went down. You could make people feel happy, you could make people feel sad, and all of this they measured. They even went and did some really interesting ones. When people listen to music and you look at faces, you rate the faces as being more attractive. People who listen to music report greater sexual satisfaction, which is why pornography has music. But that's another talk. We'll keep going. Other things, people are able to complete repetitive tasks quicker and with more accuracy when they listen to music. My favorite experiment out of the entire thing is that test subjects were asked to walk an unknown distance. And Group A were given music, and Group B were given no music. So the test subjects walked their distance, and at the end, the scientist was like, how far do you think you walked? The people without music vastly overestimated, like, I don't know, like 10 kilometers, like 20 kilometers. But the people who had music underestimated it. And they were putting down answers like 2 kilometers, 3 kilometers, when in actual fact it was 5 kilometers. So music has all these incredible physical effects on us, but we never knew why it made us feel emotion. We knew why it affected us physiologically. So these two geniuses, Patrick N. Yuslin and Daniel Bastfjall, fucking up that pronunciation, I know I am, they released in 2008 a paper called The Emotional Response to Music, the Need to Consider Underlying Mechanisms. So these lads, they looked at all those previous experiments that we were talking about, and they tried to find some overall common mechanics that tied it all together. And they came up with these 6 mechanics. They sound scary, but it's actually pretty fun. We're going to go into it, and you're going to be like, oh yeah, shit, I know that. Okay? So the first mechanism is called brainstem reflexes. The second is episodic memory. The third one is emotional contagion. The fourth one is visual imagery. The fifth one is evaluative conditioning. And the last one is, at my feet, musical expectancy. So we're going to go into them one by one, and we'll listen to some examples. So the first one is brainstem reflexes. It's the oldest and most primal part of our brain. So that's when we hear a sound that's like sudden, quick, and sharp. It gets our attention. And this is because, evolutionarily speaking, monkeys who paid attention to these sounds lived longer than monkeys that did not pay attention to these sounds. So other examples are, like I said, sudden loud noises, very high frequency sounds like this. When we paid attention to these noises, we survived. And because we survived, we passed on our genes, and now humans have this inbuilt thing in their brain where they're like, oh, that noise. Other things are low frequency sounds. These all indicate danger. Here's another example. So there's a very deep part of your brain that gets triggered when you hear sounds in this brainstem reflexes category and you pay attention. That's great because we can use this later on. I'll show you how. The last example is very fast-moving sounds or sounds that vary in pitch. Wee, woo, wee, woo, wee, woo. It's no surprise that ambulance sirens do that for a reason. It gets your attention. So the next mechanism we're going to look at is episodic memory. And this is where you connect a very specific event in your life to a song. Now, the best example that I can give is from a study in 1978, is when a gentleman studied the, oh darling, it's our song phenomenon. So many couples have a song. From when they first met, from when they first kissed, when they first danced, I don't know. But that is the perfect example of episodic memory. It's a very specific song that is connected with a very specific event, and when you hear the song, you have an emotional response to it because it reminds you of the event. Yeah. I saw some smiles in the crowd, so maybe some people knew what that song was. It's from Final Fantasy VII, and it's one of the fight scenes and the music that goes with it. So when you design games, this episodic memory is incredibly important. If your storyline or your gameplay builds up to something, the music that a person hears is connected forever in their mind with that moment. So episodic memory, you can then play the music later in your advertising or media content, and it triggers the emotion that they had at that time. Okay? So bear that in mind. As game designers, episodic memory is very, very important because you create this connection. It also happens with movies. Jurassic Park theme song, Titanic theme song, you name it. So the third mechanism is emotional contagion. This is a really interesting one. Basically, when we hear a piece of music, we identify with the person who wrote the music and what they were feeling at the time. So if something is sad, so the music has a slow tempo, it has a minor key, it has a very low timbre, we identify with the composer at the time and we copy his emotional response. So we feel sadness as well. And this is the third mechanism for how we feel emotion from music. Let's look at an example. There's not a single person in this room, I would bet, that thinks that that is a happy song. It's not. It's a sad song. And as humans, we're able to identify this. Interestingly, it's something that we're actually born with. Children as young as 3 and 4 can correctly identify the emotions within music. And basically, our ability to do this is linked with our ability to feel compassion. So if you see someone trip, you're like, oh shit, you get embarrassed for them. If you see someone get kicked in the balls, you're like, oh man. As humans, we feel this compassion for other people. And it's the same thing with music. We feel the emotion of the composer. And it's a very, very strong thing. And it's a very, very good mechanism to use when you're designing your games. So the fourth way is visual imagery. This is the most controversial one. When you listen to music, some people, not everyone, get images and pictures in their head. This is linked to something called synesthesia, where your senses get crossed. So people can, when they think of a color, they associate it with a number. If they look at a shape, they smell a certain flavor or something like this. It's like cross-wiring. So when you listen to music, you get visual imagery in your mind's eye, and then this imagery causes an emotional response. Interestingly enough, when you close your eyes and you see these images, they're called photisms. They've been studied scientifically, and I'll tell you more about them. For the next thing, I would like you to close your eyes, and we're going to listen to a piece of music, and I want you to just enjoy it and let me know if you see anything. Okay, the reason that this is controversial is not everyone has this ability. In fact, it's maybe like 80% of the population can see music in their head, the other 20%, they just don't. What is super interesting is that if that 20% of people who don't see images I'm not condoning this or saying you should do it, but if these people take psychedelic drugs or smoke marijuana, it increases the chances of them seeing visuals in their head, and this stays with them for the rest of their life. So it's something that you can fix. I'm not saying I can fix it for you, but it's a good one to know. Okay. Did everyone, some people put your hand up? Did you see something? Maybe not? Okay, good. Excellent. Right, so the next thing is called evaluative conditioning. And so like episodic memory, where an emotion was connected with a specific event, for evaluative conditioning, it's much broader. So when you hear a certain song over time, and you connect this with emotion. So for example, like the Happy Birthday song, okay? We all hear it on our birthday. On our birthdays, we feel happy. So when we hear the Happy Birthday song, we feel a little bit happy. So it's something that has to occur repeatedly over time. For some people, church bells sound evil or serious because they associate it with funerals, they associate it with church, they associate it with all of this stuff. So the key thing here is repetitiveness over time. For me, personally, whenever I hear, like I'm from Ireland, by the way, I've been living away from Ireland for 5 years, and whenever I hear Irish music, I get very homesick. So we're going to listen to this as an example.
Last night as I lay dreaming of pleasant days gone by, me mind been bent on rambling, to Ireland I did fly. I stepped on board a vision and I followed with the will, till next I came to anchor at the cross.
So, for everyone, it's an incredibly personal thing, this evaluative conditioning, because not everyone has the same experiences over time. So this is a very difficult one to trigger in people, so it's not something you can really design for. Okay, this is another example. So over the course of growing up as children, we would have played with games consoles that would have used 8-bit processor, 8-bit cards to produce the music. This music is now an entire genre called bit pop or chiptune, and what they're doing is they're using exactly this evaluative conditioning to trigger a sense of nostalgia in you by emulating the songs and sounds from your childhood. There you go. So the last one is called musical expectancy. That's where when we listen to music, we in our heads, for some reason, we think we know where it's going to go. If the music satisfies that and goes where we want it to, we get a little hit of dopamine or adrenaline. If the music doesn't go where we want it to go, it gives us an emotional response to it. For example, that's why remixes are so popular. It's something that you know, but remixed in a completely different way. So it kind of confronts your expectation and gives you an emotional response to it. We're going to look at an example. So this is musical expectancy. Yeah, there you go. Your brain wants to finish it because it knows it. And when it does finish it, it's like, okay, cool. We're going to listen to one of my favorite remixes at the moment. So this is a song that many, many people know. I think it's James Brown, but it's mixed in a very different way. And yeah, let's enjoy it.
Do you want to dance? Yeah! Moving, grooving, slip and slide. Yeah!
So modern music has turned this musical expectancy into a formula. There's this thing that many of you may or may not be familiar with called a drop, where a composer builds up your expectancy. The music gets faster, it gets quieter a little bit, but it keeps building. And then there's this moment of release, and that's the expectancy part, and many people get an emotional response to that. We're going to look at an example next. In the 70s and 80s, many rock bands were taking a lot of drugs and experimenting, and they wanted to break this expectation. So we're going to look at an example here. So again, it starts off like a classic rock song. It builds up. You have the expectation that it's going to maybe continue with a riff or some screaming, and then you have Austrian yodeling, which is a bit of a break of expectation. So I'm running out of time. Those are the 6 musical mechanisms. What I would urge you to do as game designers is to look at those mechanisms and try and figure out which one you can apply to get to your end desired result. So if you want to get people's attention, you use the first one, which is the primal stem reflexes. If you want to make people feel happy, if you want to make people feel sad, use music that use the emotional contagion mechanism. If you want people forever and always to associate a certain moment in your game with a certain song, you use the evaluative conditioning. So by just taking a little bit of time to pay attention to the music that you use, you can have a much bigger impact on your players, their satisfaction, their immersion, and their overall enjoyment, and ultimately your monetization. Thanks very much. There you go.
We do have time for questions, so if guys have any questions. Yes, just a second. It's almost an exercise.
Hi, good stuff. Did you actually pick the Hocus Pocus from the Baby Driver soundtrack? Because I love the movie. Recently seen it, and it's a great song.
It's a fantastic song. Well done. Are you from the Netherlands by any chance?
No,
You're not?
I'm from Finland, yes.
You're from Finland, okay.
Yes.
Usually there's one person in the crowd from the Netherlands who correctly identifies that song because they're a Dutch band. I don't know where I got it from. I might have just pulled it from the internet.
Yeah, that's a little off-limit question, but anyhow.
Yeah. Nice one, man. Well done on spotting that.
More?
You can feel free to chat to me. I'm going to be around all day, so if you have any questions or want to do it in a personal way, just come chat to me.
Well, I have one, if I may.
Yeah, absolutely.
Why do you think that in other creative media, like in films, people understand the power of the soundtrack so clearly and so easily, and then in games it's so complicated for the designers to understand how they can use music to create these emotions?
It's a super good point. I think that the main constraint is budget. When you're making a movie, you have the budget for it, you work with a composer, and many of us were on really tight budgets, and I think this is the biggest barrier. But it doesn't need to be. There are many companies who do it for a good price. There are many people, individuals that do it as well. And yeah, it adds a lot to it. But yeah, very good point.